My name's Jocelyn, and I'm a baker at the Baker New Bedford, as well as an instructor at BCC. And this video was filmed at the Baker, but we did this for the class of Artisan Bread at BCC. This is the blizzard of 26 right now, so we've missed a good amount of school. So to show the skills in action that we've talked about, and you guys have actually done a lot as well, we did a video showing all the skills. So he floured the top of the bin, rotated it out, and now he's going to also flour the other top. The start of this video has some poor video quality, but it does kind of get better after a couple minutes, maybe even like 1 or 2 minutes, not even. So just hang on tight. So again, you'll notice him using a liberal amount of flour at this step in the process, but as we get towards the end of the shaping, that flour tends to back off. So this is Brandon. This is the owner of the baker. He was also an instructor himself, so that's why he was able to help out and willing to help out on this. So huge thanks to him for that. You'll see that he very lightly degassed again, and now he's going to cut rectangular units that are going to turn into beautiful tubes that will turn into our beautiful baguettes. So you'll notice that he literally took 2 cuts to get the exact amount he wanted, 300 grams. This is from the repetition of always handling dough the same way, and again, starting off with beautiful, slightly degassed, even dough in a rectangle. Rectangles lead to tubes in this situation. Here you see him move on to the pre-shape itself. He walks down the top of the dough in about 2 to 3 touches and then tucks and tucks that seam under to get a little bit of tension, but not maybe as much as we were because we were probably going a little too aggressive while you guys were learning. This is the way you want to do it. 3 touches at most and then tuck, tuck, tuck that seam underneath to get that nice even tube. Here it is in up close. So slightly degas, tuck 1, 2, and then tuck, tuck that seam underneath. You see how much volume is in that tube? That is something you want to keep. You want to start to develop the air and allow proofing to take place in this pre-shape as well, developing gas that you're going to be so careful to not knock out when you do your final shape. Once more, 1, 2, tuck, tuck. That's all it took. This is how all the pre-shapes look. Take a note at how they all look the same size, about the same width, same length, and they all have a ton of gas bubbles that you can currently see on the surface. Here I am coming in to show you the final shaping of baguette. So we start off with that tube, slightly degassing, and then tucking 2/3 down, rotating, coming all the way down and using our thumbs to tuck that seam in, forming a seam at the bottom, which is very important because we need to keep track of that seam. Using the base of my hand, really smacking that seam into place to form a thin seam that is very prominent so that we can keep track of it for this part. Here comes the rollout. So you'll notice that I start off very lightly, just trying to get a little bit of length, and then I'm looking, stopping, trying to see the shape of the tube, making sure that it's where I want it to be. And you notice that I probably only handled that dough for less than a minute, so you should be doing the same. Your instinct is to want to handle the dough more to try to make it as perfect as possible. But when you're dealing with gassy doughs like this, you really don't want to do that. You want to maintain as much gas as possible. So here I rotated it so you can really see me smacking that seam into place. Some people just use their fingertips, but I like to do a little bit of fingertips and then a lot with the base of my hand. You'll see once again, I start out at the belly, giving it a little bit of length, checking it out to see if the shape is where I want it to be, looking at it, and I'm done with it. Not much time spent. Always jumping into flour after the pre-shape, onto the table, slightly degas. I slowed this one down so you can really see it. 2/3 of the dough coming down. You can already start to see the belly of the dough look even and full. And that's where you want to be. You don't want to destroy the belly and all the air in the beginning. Right here is where my thumbs, I pause so you can see my thumbs start to tuck that dough in as I come up and over to really finish that seam. And then once again, reinforcing it with the base of my hand. From here, I throw it back into the flour, a little light dusting of flour, light dusting. You'll see I start with one hand to get that diameter I want in the belly, and then eventually work 2 hands all the way out to getting the tapered ends. You see I pause and I look at the shape, trying to assess where I might need to work on it. I saw that that end was thicker, so just using a little bit of pressure, not even really any pressure. It's just the contact between the dough, my hands, and the table that's really pushing it out. So once again, into a very light dusting of flour. I don't know why I paused here so long. Okay, 2/3 down, nice even belly, rotate all the way down to start to form our seam, trying to tuck over and have a nice bit of tension on that belly, and then finishing with my hand, the base of my hand. Here we go, back into the little bit of dusting of flour, out. And now I'm going to extend out to get my length and taper my ends to my liking. And again, this one actually I touched a little too much, and I knew it at the end. I said too much, but I took out the audio because obviously I work in a kitchen and the audios are going to be crazy. So I rotated the baguette. This is after it's proofed for about an hour, transferring it over to the transfer peel. I know some of you guys get a little stuck on how to do this part, so flip it over, nice side up, nice side onto the board, and then I flip onto the loading papers. There it is, there's the flip. And you'll see I go back in with my hand and gently guide it back into a nice elongated pre-shape, making sure there's no wonky shapes going on. And then I'm going to do that with all these. The downside is obviously touching the baguette can always lead to more degassing and also slowing your production time. If you go back and touch every single baguette, you're going to eventually get caught up. If you go from 12 baguettes to 24 baguettes, an extra touch can add to your production time, slow you down. So it's something I do to like touch up. I wanted to show you guys the best practice, but it is not always a step you're going to want to do in the future. You ideally want to place them in the right spot to begin with. So this is the process for shaping our epi baguettes. A pair of scissors, and I showed you guys this in class. It's not my favorite thing, but people like the look of it. They like how it looks artisan. It looks like a wheat stem. So just wanted to throw it in here for those of you who are curious. If one day you want to come back to this video and see what that looks like for your final, I'm of course going to want you to score it so I can get a nice read on your baguette. But this is just the process of epis. Cutting, flipping, side to side as you go. Okay, here is the scoring, which is the most important part. You see here that my hand is trying to find that center of the belly that I don't want to come too far off with the scores. So I'm trying to keep my blade and my scores in that 2 to 3 finger width of the belly. This first batch wasn't the best scoring for me. It's actually the next batch that you'll see. So here it is. And you'll notice that I'm always adjusting my board to rotate it. I always try to approach baguettes the same way. So we do 3 scores. You want your first score to come a third of the way down the baguette, and then your second score comes a third up, going down, and so forth. So this is the best one. You'll see that like those center 2 are probably the best in this situation. Trying to not go too far left or right off the belly, and also trying to be careful about how deep we're going. And then this is what they look like when they're finished. You'll notice that those 3 on the right are probably the best, and across the board these are all pretty consistent in the shape and size. Even if I don't have that characteristic ear on every single one of these, sometimes it's also a matter of how you steam the oven. So I'm not too torn up about it, but across the board the shape has maintained, which means the scoring was good. If you don't score, you guys have seen it in class, massive blowouts will happen, and that's what the epis look like once they're baked off as well. But yes, scoring is super important. So just kind of even draw it out for yourself to practice it. And then here is the interior of the baguette. This bottom left hand of the baguette, you'll notice, is not the most aerated. And that's obviously because maybe this was that baguette that I said at the end, touching too much. When you touch, the more you degas. But that center right there is perfect. That is what you're looking for. Even the top of the baguette seems to be pretty okay. And the bottom, although you can see some of a dense crumb, you still have a good amount of aeration happening here and there. So across the board, pretty happy. So that is baguette. Now I'm on to stretch and folds for sourdough. Okay, so this is a slowed down video of the first stretch and fold on the sourdough. And you'll notice that I'm doing that, what we call the reverse coil fold, grabbing a big chunk of dough and slowly accumulating dough and working my way up and stretching the top of the dough to get a good belly to grab. Then I go top under, bottom under, tuck, tuck. So pretty big improvement from where we started to where we just finished right there on how the dough is sitting. As it continues to sit, it's going to start to slack out. So we'll just keep developing that through each stretch and fold. So this was the first one. The second one is a different angle, so you can't see it as well, but notice from the first, that's how much it slacked out. This is a second. So I go grab from the belly, top down, rotate, grabbing from the belly. Top goes under, grabbing from the belly, bottom goes under. And then right here, tuck, tuck, trying to get as much tension developed as possible, making sure that belly's at the bottom. So from the slacked piece that we had to start to that beautiful ball, that is a sign of a good stretch and fold. And then right here, this is our third stretch and fold, which you'll notice from the annotated tape that we put on all of our bins to keep track of where we're at. So even from that bulbous dough that we just saw, it's already slacked out a good amount, but you can start to see that it's not fully slacking out the entire bin. So grabbing from the belly, slapping the top down, coming back, lifting up, letting the bottom come out and under. Here we go again. Bottom, top, and then tucking, trying to just develop any bit of tension where I feel like it might be lacking. And I think you get a better view on this one on this second dough right here that's about to happen. All right, and I'm also obviously putting my hands in water. That's what I'm doing. Top comes in the middle, bottom goes to the middle, and then I rotate. Once again, grab the belly. This time I go bottom and top in one fell swoop because it's already got so much tension I can't really get both of those in there. And then the ends start to look a little frayed and a little messy, so I'll just kind of clean that up, tucking it both ways, and I'm happy with that. That is the third stretch and fold. All right, this is actually a different dough that I'm just going to show you for a second. Of course, it's in slow motion because it's a little bit aggressive on the technique on my part. See how I'm going to flip the bottom out, under, and then flip over. So this is really like, if you can get the coil fold looking like this with a really hydrated or loose dough, that's what you're looking for. This is a type of dough that greatly benefits from the coil fold. I'm not going to show you any bowl folds in this video because those are great when we're working with small batches, but in a large batch capacity, that's not something you're going to see in production. So that was focaccia dough. And I guess that was my last fold over there, not the third. All right, this is our pre-shape on sourdough. You'll notice that I find a happy face. From here, I work with the dough in a couple directions. I always go top down, rotate 90, top down. Grabbing from the top, rolling down, getting the tension, top down, rotate. And that's literally all it is to it for me. And at the end, I kind of like even out any shaping to make sure it looks like a round ball for a pre-shape. So right here, this one's a little tricky to see, but I'm going to grab the nice face with my thumbs and keep working that towards me, putting all that loose and unkempt looking dough towards the bottom of the bowl. And now here we go, rotating again. This one was a quick one, so you'll actually see it better on the next set. Once again, find the happy face. That's my job right here, is the pre-shaper. There it is. I found it. And now I'm keeping it towards up at the top. And now I go to top, bottom, left, right. Top, down, rotate. Top, down, rotate. Making sure to really develop that tension on the face of the dough, connecting it to the table. And you'll also notice, very important, there's not a ton of flour here. It actually is no flour here because this was a high gluten dough that we were working with. When we do sourdough over the weekend, we use high gluten to prevent the dough from slacking out like crazy after a 2-day fermentation. So definitely no flour needed here. If you're working with a slacker dough or a dough that's using a less glutinous flour, then obviously you might use a little bit of flour, but you're not going to fold it and shape it into flour. So I have a couple more here for you to see, so in slow motion, so I'll let you see those, and I'll be back in a few seconds. And I know it seemed like I was going to stop narration, but this right here is actually a really good clip where I start to slow it down, so you can really see the technique a bit more about how I'm rotating the dough 90 degrees, bringing that top down close, making sure I'm not ripping it, and then rotating it. And then when it comes to just rounding off the shape, kind of pushing it side to side to look nice and round. And then now this is back at normal speed, so this is the speed in which I'm shaping as someone who has to shape 20 loaves at a time. This also isn't the job I normally do. This is the pastry shift in particular at the baker, and I'm not normally like fully responsible for this shift, but it was a shift I worked for about a year, so it's almost second nature sometimes for shaping and stuff like that. All right, and then we're gonna let that rest for about an hour until it's relaxed. And here is the shaping of the petard. So this is something I know a lot of you are concerned about. So right here, I'm really pressing out a lot of gas. That is because we work with toast sandwiches. So when we have a ton of gas bubbles and air trapped in the loaf, if we're spreading something like avocado through, it just falls right through the grater. So this is the shaping. Obviously right now I'm getting towards the end where I'm crisscrossing, which isn't something you have to do, but I do that to start to form some of the dough. There's Brandon with his beautiful shape, of course. And then I'm gathering the dough towards the center, trying to keep that football shape, and also keeping in mind where the seam is going to be at the end. You want a nice straight seam that's going to keep your dough intact. So a football shaped-ish batard. There it is. You'll see the surface is nice and smooth. Once again, that's Amelia in the background. So here into a light bit of flour, and then we're going to slightly degas / aggressively degas in our situation. A third bottom up, a third top down, and then crisscrossing once again to try to start to collect some of that dough towards the center to achieve a tapered look. And just walking that up that pre-shape we already made. And then I believe there's another clip. Here you go, slightly bit of floured, slight bit of degas. Then we're going to go bottom third to the center. Oh, I'm just kind of like relaxing the dough a bit. Bottom third towards the center, top third down. Now we rotate, and then once again, we're going to start to crisscross and gather some of that dough and just walk it up, trying to keep a football shape, trying to keep a nice seam at the bottom. So that is the sourdough process. For the most part, obviously there's still baking that's going to happen and fermentation and all that, but this video is just to help you guys check out some of those skills you're concerned about. So right here, as I get towards the end, you'll notice how straight that little bit of dough is that I'm working at the bottom. And I'm going to actually show you the seam. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me via email, and I hope this helped. There you go. There's the seam. Decently straight. There's a little bit of stuff going on, but decently straight. You guys really don't need to freak out. Most of you are pretty good at all this stuff. And here's some chaos from the kitchen.
This is for my students.
Oh, is it? In that case.
Hi, Jocelyn students. Wait, what do they call you, Mr. Rome?
Wow.
Mr.
Professor.
Rome. Professor. Chef. Profe.
Can you go back to the
I need
middle,
you to
please?
leave me alone. Profe Jerome.